The Japanese tea ceremony is a ritual tour influenced by Buddhism in which green tea is prepared and served to a small group of guests in a peaceful setting. The ceremony can take as long as 4 hours and there are many traditional gestures that both the server and the guest must perform. See Northcote Parkinson, a British writer, formulated Parkinson's rule: work expands to fill the time allotted to it, or, conversely, the amount of work completed is in inverse proportion to the number of people employed. Simply said, if you have an hour to do a 5-minute job, it will take an hour to do it. A large number of people accomplish less work than a smaller number of people. A national study into fraud by bookkeepers employed at small and medium-sized businesses has uncovered 65 instances of theft in more than 5 years, with more than $31 million stolen. Of the cases identified by the research, 56 involved women and 9 instances involved men. However, male bookkeepers who defrauded their employer stole 3 times, on average, the amount that women stole. The semiconductor industry has been able to improve the performance of electronic systems for more than 4 decades by making ever smaller devices. However, this approach will soon encounter both scientific and technical limits, which is why the industry is exploring a number of alternative device technologies. Clemenson wanted to see if claims of question dodging actually held up, historically not necessarily in the unique case of Trump. So Clemenson analyzed the transcripts of 14 presidential debates, from 1996 to 2012. Overall, he found 51 accusations of question dodging, 26 by Dems, 25 by Republicans. The free market is extremely competitive and companies are constantly trying to gain an edge over their rivals. Merchandising and brand image play a major role in attracting customers, but they often lead to overpackaging. This is a serious problem since most packaging these days are made of plastics which are not biodegradable. Some people blame the manufacturers for their blatant disregard, while others point the finger at consumers. The term supernova was coined in the 1930s by a memorably odd astrophysicist named Fritz Zwicky. Born in Bulgaria and raised in Switzerland, Zwicky came to the California Institute of Technology in the 1920s and there has once distinguished himself by his abrasive personality and erratic talents. He didn't seem to be outstandingly bright, and many of his colleagues considered him little more than an irritating buffoon. Australian workplaces are increasingly suffering from depression, anxiety and stress, according to a large study of mental health in corporate Australia. Mental illness appears to have increased by a third in the last decade. Depression is now the primary mental health disorder. It has been 200 years since the birth of Karl Marx, but the German philosopher's relevance has never been greater. The publication of Marx and Friedrich Engels' The Communist Manifesto in 1848 was not greeted with great fanfare, a reception unbecoming what is now considered the most influential political pamphlet of all time. Astronomers discovered 7 planets, roughly Earth-sized, orbiting a dwarf star some 380 trillion kilometers from our own. That is 40 light-years away, fairly close and within range of planned big telescopes. Scientists therefore think it offers the best chance yet to discover evidence of life, or why it hasn't evolved, beyond the solar system.
China's biggest online search company, Baidu, said it would make its self-driving car technologies available to others. In a bid to advance autonomous vehicles, and perhaps to become an industry standard in the same way that Google's Android operating system is for smartphones, Baidu's Apollo project will distribute technologies to developers and carmakers, initially for use in restricted environments, as soon as July. Unlike the iconic Nazca lines, most of which are only visible from overhead, the older Paracas cliffs were laid down on hillsides, making them visible to villages below. The two cultures also pursued different artistic subjects. Nazca lines most often consist of lines or polygons, but many of the newfound Paracas figures depict humans. Conservationists in New Zealand have come up with a novel way of raising money for one of the country's lesser-known endangered bird species, by holding a race to see which male stitchbird, or hee-hee, has the fastest sperm. The Great Hee-Hee Sperm Race will pit samples from birds collected from 4 different hee-hee colonies, and donors can place a $10 bet on which of the 128 samples swims the fastest. Virtual assistants have become increasingly sophisticated, and more human-like, since the days when Clippy asked if you needed help with your document. These assistants are intended to make programs and apps easier to use, but research suggests that human-like virtual assistants may actually deter some people from seeking help on tasks that are supposed to measure achievement. High-tech prosthetics allow amputees to engage more fully in everyday life, even to compete in sporting events. Researchers have demonstrated how brain activity is used to identify different terrains, level ground and stairs, for example, a key step in developing prosthetics that allow the user's prosthesis to automatically adjust to changing ground conditions in real time. Exercise can reverse damage to sedentary, aging hearts and help prevent risk of future heart failure, if it's enough exercise, and if it's begun in time, according to a new study by cardiologists. In a new study of childhood mortality rates between 1961 and 2010 in the United States and 19 economically similar countries, researchers report that while there's been overall improvement among all the countries, the U.S. has been slowest to improve. Infants in the U.S. were 76% more likely to die. When the young artist was asked about his drawing, he explained that he had started by taking a photograph of himself sitting by a window at home. He then drew his face from the photograph and replaced the buildings which were outside the window with trees. This gave the picture a softer, more artistic background. Kinderman says he thinks the compound could be a win-win for the planet and the animals. You know, the methane is kind of a waste product. And this energy, instead of losing it for the animal, it can be reused for the animal in terms of performance, and at the same time we are doing something for greenhouse gas emission and climate change. The product's not on the market yet, toxicology tests are ongoing. This is what needs to happen on climate change. The world needs to put a price on carbon emissions and let the market respond. If politicians pretend this can be done without pain, it will probably result in another 5 to 10 years of pretending to take action.